Loki TV show. Was it good? Was it bad? Does it exist to prove the infinite expanses of Marvel? Kind of like the infinite expanses of space? Get out of my head, Iron Man. I don't really think it was that great. I can't figure out why it has good reviews. But from the boring and rigid cinematography to the very wooden choreography that felt more scripted than it should, I really can't find the positives in this show, and I think there are some bigger points to focus on in terms of the way it was written. But first, I think I want to highlight the one positive part that I've found in this show, and that's definitely Owen Wilson. Owen Wilson was really able to deliver his lines well. He always felt like he knew what to do, he knew what to say, and I don't know, I think he's just a really great actor. I don't know, it's not anything against the other actors. I mean, they're good as well. It's just, he's really the stand-up part of this show. I think he's just really good for some reason. But let's get to the first point that I want to discuss, and that's definitely the whole chronology. I don't know how to describe it really, but basically, as you might know from like trailers or obviously, you know, you watch the show or whatever, Loki is the 2011 version. This is like an alternate version, or maybe 2011. I don't know what year did the Avengers come out. Some year, but it's that version of Loki from the first Avengers, right? When Loki was an evil villain bad guy who wanted to take over the world, which always strikes me as a little strange considering how the rest of the show turned out. Because from then on, he doesn't really act that way. I mean, they actually do give a reason as to why Loki has undergone the same character development that he did over the course of like most of all of Marvel movies in the span of like, you know, one episode of Loki, which, you know, chronologically is like, I don't know, half an hour of his character development. But, you know, their reason is that, you know, Owen Wilson is seen in the very first episode shows him what his life will be. He shows him the future because it's the TVA and they know the future and past of everyone's lives, yada yada yada. And he sees that, oh, I accidentally killed my mom. Oops, Thor beats me like 100 other times. And from then on, I guess he's learned his lesson. But the characters don't exactly treat him that way. They still kind of treat him like, oh, we shouldn't really trust Loki. Oh, Loki, he just wants power. He's just like power hungry. He wants this throne. But really, Loki does like really change. Like he's definitely different. Maybe it's just Tom Hiddleston trying to, you know, he's not exactly used to the role, or the role of more so of the old Loki, because essentially we do have two characters here. The Loki from 2011, who is the evil villain Loki who hates everybody and wants to conquer the world, and the Thor Ragnarok or Avengers Endgame Loki, where, you know, he's willing to sacrifice himself to stop Thanos for like, I don't know, 5 seconds so Asgardians can get away. I don't remember how much he really helped in that movie. But yeah, it feels very jarring. And it feels very obvious juxtaposed against the other character of him, that the alternate universe version of him, Sylvie, who is supposed to be another Loki, and she definitely acts a lot more cold, a lot more villainous, a lot more Loki than our main character Loki does. And it's pretty obvious in the way that their strangely romantic relationship develops. I don't know, is being in love with an alternate universe version of yourself incest? I guess that's a question that season 2 will answer. Yeah, Sylvie is definitely a much more closeted individual. She's never really fully trusts Loki. Even at the end, she's like, "Oh, Loki, you're just power hungry or whatever." But it's not really true, because Loki is the one who opens up to her. He's the one who's like, who definitely talks more about himself. Even in the episode where they're on that moon or whatever that's gonna like be destroyed in like the third episode, I think. It's definitely Loki who's the one talking about himself, who's talking about his past. You know, he's like, he talks about Thor and whatever. But you know, Sylvie doesn't really talk much. I mean, I guess she doesn't really have much to talk about, considering she was, you know, captured by the TVA at a young age. That's her explanation. But still, it definitely feels like Loki's the one who opens up to her. Later on, I think it's like the second to last episode when they're in the void with all the other Lokis, it definitely feels a lot more obvious. There's this scene that's supposed to be an intimate scene with them, where, Loki puts a blanket around her, so nice, so caring, but why is he the one who does that? Why is he the caring one, considering, like I said before, maybe chronologically, like a week or two ago, he was just plotting to take over New York. And it definitely feels a lot more obvious in that episode specifically, because that's the episode that introduces all the other different versions of Loki. There's like President Loki, there's Kid Loki, and all of them act a lot more Loki than the main character Loki does. They're all power hungry. They respect Kid Loki for killing Thor. They're like mischievous and whatever. But Loki is just like the quiet one who's like, hey guys, you want to take down Goliath maybe? Hey guys. It definitely feels very awkward chronologically, and this all culminates in the very last episode. The big resolution to the relationship, the strangely romantic, weirdly romantic relationship between main Loki and Sylvie. And this is with their meeting with Kang, right? Kang says, if you kill me, then you're going to open up loads of multiverses. He goes to this big long explanation, but that's essentially the conflict at the very end of the episode. And, it's Loki to say, oh, Sylvie, don't do this, And the juxtaposition is supposed to be, at one point, Loki was in the same position as Sylvie, hard driven down this mindset, this hard mindset. Loki's hard mindset was, I want to be king of the world, I want to take the throne. But now he's the one to try to stop Sylvie. Once again, it feels very awkward, because is this really what he would be doing as a villainous person? He's a completely different person now. He definitely feels a lot more similar to the Loki from Avengers Endgame, a lot more similar to a much more developed Loki that should have taken 10 years to develop, or however long it took from the first Avengers to Endgame, I don't know, than it did in like the 30 minutes of therapy with Mobius. And I mean, it wasn't a bad scene to explain it all, it just chronologically, it doesn't make any sense based on the way that he acts a lot more differently. And at the end of it all, he's the one to stop Sylvie, and then ultimately Sylvie is the one to say, no, Loki, I don't actually I care a lot more about killing Kang than I do you. So she kicks Loki into the portal, and then she kills Kang, and it tells the audience that this is the reason why from here on out there's going to be a Marvel multiverse. This is the reason why the next Doctor Strange movie exists. Doctor Strange and the multiverse of whatever exists, strangely enough. Now, this leads me definitely into my next weirdness with the whole show, and I would call it a gripe, but it's just really weird. They reference all of the previous Marvel movies, pretty much. A lot of them, pretty much everything from Avengers 1 to Avengers Endgame. We can infer chronologically that all that happened because we know that those movies happen. It's weird to explain, but when we're dealing with like timelines, we have to confirm that these things happened in this timeline. And what it is that Kang explains that he was the one who was controlling. He controlled the TVA, and he controlled it in a way in which the timelines would not branch out, so there'd be only one timeline. And with only one timeline, there would be no multiversal war. Makes sense. Good on him. Multiversal war sounds like a pretty bad idea, even if it causes Sylvie to lose contact with her mom or whatever. Her mom is now in the void. Oops. It's still, Kang made it sound out like a lot more people would die due to multiversal war than any other situation. But at the end of it all, this implies that all of the decisions made by the Marvel characters in the Marvel movies had no free will of their own, that they were all Kang's will, which is weird. I don't know, it doesn't really feel good. It feels just super lame, like all these other Marvel movies. There's no self-determination, there's no free will. It was just Kang was pulling the strings all along, haha. I don't know if that's what they intended, but that's definitely what it feels like. And this brings us into now we have the infinite expanses of the multiverse. So I do wonder if they will make things more creative, because another thing with this show is that it definitely didn't feel very creative. And that sounds like a strange statement, you know. This show definitely had some weird ideas, you know, taking an alternate version of a character for one, taking it into a weird nebulous concept like the TVA. Very, very weird to deal with time travel and stuff. I mean, it's not the first time they dealt with time travel, but this is certainly a weird concept to say that there's a big bureaucratic time controlling office in some weird dimension that controls everything. But ultimately, it kind of followed a similar plot to the other Marvel TV shows, and ultimately, it really does feel like the same Marvel action movie, and especially when you juxtapose it to the other Marvel TV shows that they've already put out, WandaVision and the other one. Was it Captain America? Captain America and the Winter... Captain Falcon? Captain Falcon. No. Falcon and the Winter Soldier. That's what the show was called. For some reason, follows similar plot beats. And that's basically that these TV shows take two Marvel characters. They even put the characters in the title of the show just so you don't forget. And it takes them on their whimsical adventure to have character conflict, but ultimately, you know, discover that they actually, you know, really like each other. And then there's like a twist villain at the end. Now, I mean, obviously, you know, these twist villains, you know, we're talking specifically about Loki. There were some hints to Kang or something, but like the point is that at the end of the day, Kang isn't introduced until the very end, so it still feels very weird. We've already done this before. I'm not surprised at this point. This plot point has already been used. You know, we had the witch at the end of WandaVision or whatever. We had Carter at the end of Falcon TV show. I don't know. It's like kind of boring, kind of weird that they all had a similar thing going on. Is this a coincidence? Like, who did this? So, I don't know. And definitely another thing about I don't know if I should call it creativity, variety of these shows should be that it feels like the marketing was misleading me to believe that this was going to be a lot different than definitely like the more plot-driven WandaVision and Falcon show. Because in the trailers we see, you know, Loki in these, you know, wild situations. Loki as DB Cooper, Loki as president with a gang. But as we find out later on, one of them is a flashback, and the other one isn't even the main character Loki. It's a different version of Loki, which is kind of weird because based on those trailers, I would assume that like maybe Loki does a crazy different thing, completely different thing from the last one in each episode. And that's not to say that each episode wasn't different. It's just that each episode followed a plot thread as opposed to, you know, maybe there could be like a kind of show in which each episode is different. This is the TVA. You know, they can go through time. Maybe this is like a show where Loki travels to different points in time and does wacky things or whatever because, you know, the TVA lets him for some reason. And, you know, he does loads of mischief and whatever. I don't know, it could be like evil Doctor Who or something funny like that. But at the end of the day, this was just pretty similar, and it definitely rubs me the wrong way. I mean, by now, with the amount of Marvel cinematic properties, I should clarify, that exist in the world, Marvel fatigue, it shouldn't even be a question. I'm really kind of sick of it by this point. So honestly, if anything good came out of this show, besides Owen Wilson having another acting role, because, you know, he's already done a million, he needs a million more. Maybe the multiverse will give us more varied shows than our typical plot-driven action movie with funny quips. And of course, not something similar to the last few shows we've gotten, which have followed such a similar, very oddly similar plot altogether. Now, I don't know, if I were to give this a rating, I haven't really thought about a rating system or anything, but I guess, like, I don't know, maybe a 3 out of 10, maybe even a 4 out of 10 if I'm being generous. I mean, it wasn't, like, terrible, but there were just so many weird choices, such weird presentation at times. Maybe my vocabulary is just limited, but yeah, not very good.